Welcome back to my channel. What you're about to hear was never meant for the public. It was locked away in a private safe, hidden behind trust documents, and buried under years of silence. Until now. Inside that safe was document number 01, a contract between Kody Brown and Robyn Brown, dated months before their official marriage. Signed, stamped, sealed in secrecy. And what's inside it would leave Mary, Janelle, and Christine completely blindsided. It began in a dusty storage compartment in Flagstaff, Arizona, untouched for years. The lock rusted, the air thick with dust and stillness. Buried under old family photo albums and boxes labeled Coyote Pass lay a worn leather folder, sealed inside a plain manila envelope. The woman who found it, a former Brown family assistant we'll call Amber, said she was once asked to store private items temporarily. But no one ever came back for them. When she finally opened that folder, what she found would shatter the public image of the SisterWives family forever. At first glance, it looked like a prenup, but the dates didn't add up. The Browns' legal wedding was December 2014, yet this contract was signed 8 months earlier. Every page meticulously typed, notarized, and stamped with words like custodial control, asset division, and confidentiality enforcement. Amber was stunned. She didn't speak for days. But one line on the final page changed everything. This agreement, although legally binding between the parties, shall not be deemed classified by any court unless directly challenged. In that moment, Amber took it as permission. She contacted a former SisterWives producer, someone who had worked closely with the family in the early seasons. That producer confirmed whispers had long existed about a secret Robyn agreement, something that gave her unusual control over the show, exclusive interviews, creative influence, and final say over certain edits. But until now, no one had proof. Amber allowed the producer to digitize the pages, but not to keep the originals. And from there, document 01 vanished into the shadows of the internet. Anonymous Reddit posts, blurry screenshots, whispers in fan groups. Most dismissed it as fake, until one viewer zoomed in on page 3 and matched the notary's seal to a real Flagstaff notary from 2014. The leak was real. And the consequences were catastrophic. The first page of the document read, "This agreement outlines the legal, emotional, and financial expectations between Kody Brown and Robyn Sullivan in anticipation of their eventual legal union, as well as the redistribution of patriarchal responsibilities in a plural marriage home." Redistribution of patriarchal responsibilities. That single phrase lit the fandom on fire. Had Robyn rewritten the rules of plural marriage? Or had Kody done it for her? The whispers spread like wildfire. TLC went silent. Kody and Robyn, no comment. The wives, stone-faced. But silence only made the scandal grow louder. Because this wasn't a prenup. It was a shift in power. And when fans read the leaked clauses, the betrayal became undeniable. One section titled Financial Safeguarding and Marital Resource Allocation spelled it out clearly. A separate marital trust would be created solely for Robyn and her dependents. It guaranteed her 35% of all future family income, including TLC contracts, real estate, and business profits. Her own business income? Entirely hers. The other wives? Not even named. Instead, they were placed under a vague label: extended household members. Funds for them would be managed by Kody alone at his discretion for the good of the family. And that wasn't even the end of it. Tonight's revelation isn't just a scandal. It's the kind of truth that cracks open a decade of illusion. Hidden deep inside the contract, buried under subsection 2C, was a single sentence that changed everything. It read, "Upon dissolution of cohabitation or spiritual separation from any non-legal spouse, said persons give up future claim to any property not specifically mentioned in previous documents." And just like that, the curtain was pulled back. That one clause, short, cold, and devastating, erased Mary, Janelle, and Christine from any legal entitlement. 3 women who gave decades of loyalty, faith, and family, now reduced to nothing more than spiritual footnotes. It rewrote their entire story. Every argument, every heartbreak, every tear shed under the guise of family unity was now redefined as a slow, silent exile. Their exits didn't just look emotional anymore. They looked engineered, planned, predetermined, inevitable, but the shock didn't stop there. Because on page 4, under clause 2E, another bombshell waited. Robyn's name shall be included in the title deeds of any subsequent properties acquired in the family name, including Coyote Pass. Coyote Pass, the so-called shared dream of the entire SisterWives family. For years, it was sold to viewers as a symbol of unity, a fresh start, a family's shared destiny. But if this clause was real, that dream was already in private hands before the cameras ever rolled. No wonder the land sat untouched for years. No wonder the tension kept growing while the soil remained barren. Because maybe Robyn wasn't waiting for unity. Maybe she was waiting for ownership. And then came the line that froze even the most loyal fans in place. Under Section 3A, titled Emotional Accountability and Domestic Prioritization, the contract declared, primary emotional energy, domestic support, and relational investment shall be allocated to the legal spouse, with others included as able, without disrupting the foundational bond. That meant one thing, plain and brutal. Robyn was the priority, legally, financially, emotionally, every other wife, background characters in a story written for someone else. It wasn't just a prenup. It was a blueprint for isolation, a map showing exactly how to phase out Mary, Janelle, and Christine, quietly, systematically, while keeping the illusion of family intact for the cameras. Suddenly, Christine's tears about feeling invisible weren't just emotional breakdowns. They were evidence. Janelle's exhaustion, her "I have to figure things out myself" speeches, they weren't defiance, they were survival. Robyn wasn't just the favorite wife. She was the only wife who mattered on paper, the only one with legal rights, protected assets, and written authority. Kody hadn't just fallen in love, he'd built a fortress around her. Brick by legal brick, he sealed the others outside, leaving them in a slow fade, financially vulnerable and emotionally stranded. And then came the final dagger. The clause ended with something called the perpetuity option, a legal provision giving Kody the right to renew or extend the contract at any time by mutual agreement. No court, no lawyer. No witnesses, just him and Robyn, meaning they could rewrite their marriage whenever they wanted, in secret. A family that once preached unity and shared love was now exposed as a corporate structure of control. No wonder the wives drifted apart. They were never part of the foundation to begin with, just names written in dust while Robyn's name was engraved in ink. And as screenshots of these pages flooded Reddit, X, and YouTube, fans began connecting the dots. Christine leaving in 2021, Janelle pulling away in 2022, Mary's official split in 2023. Each departure lined up with the very clauses of this contract. Kody wasn't blindsided, and he was prepared. He didn't lose control if he had it in writing. Because if you build a family where only one person can win, then it's not a family anymore, it's a strategy. But the storm didn't end there. Pages 5 through 7 revealed scribbled initials, KB and RS, beside a chilling new section fans have since dubbed the Robyn Clause. The heading? Confidential marital conduct and public image maintenance. It sounded more like a corporate NDA than a marriage vow. The first line read, the second party, Robyn Sullivan, agrees to maintain discretion, avoid emotional outbursts, and ensure consistent public composure in all family or media-related matters, as the family's public image constitutes part of its shared income source. Translation. Robyn had legally agreed to act perfect. Her calmness, her restraint, her endless grace and poise on camera wasn't just personality. It was contractual behavior. She had signed away her right to show real emotion, to disagree with Kody on film, to reveal money disputes, or to display frustration. If she did, her trust fund could be frozen pending review. It was control disguised as professionalism. But it also gave Robyn something powerful in return. Because right beneath that, in Section 4B, came her reward. As recognition of the second party's dedication to discretion and image management, the first party grants joint control over all media negotiations, appearances, and licensing related to the family brand. That single sentence changed everything. It meant Robyn wasn't just the wife. She was the co-producer, the business partner, the gatekeeper. She had the legal authority to approve or block public content, to decide what the world saw and what it didn't. And suddenly, all those years of editing made sense. Robyn's soft lighting, her sympathetic close-ups, her scenes that lingered longer, while Christine and Janelle's were filled with chaos and tears. That wasn't random. That was contractual storytelling. The Robyn Clause explained every pattern, every carefully edited confession, every tearful monologue, every "I just want peace" moment. It wasn't what she felt. It was what she was required to perform. And just when fans thought the revelations couldn't get darker, Section 4C began with a line that would turn this scandal into a moral nightmare. What you're about to hear is the part that changes everything, the smoking gun inside the infamous Robyn clause. It wasn't just about money or image anymore. This was about total control. Buried in the fine print of Section 4C, a single line sealed the fate of the family's truth. The first party shall consult the second party for counsel before taking any public stance regarding plural family relationships or future marital considerations. That meant one thing and one thing only. Before Kody could defend Christine, address Janelle's frustrations, or even acknowledge Mary's growing distance, he was legally required to ask Robyn's permission. Every word he spoke in interviews, every statement he made on the show, every moment where he seemed robotic, repeating the same phrases over and over, it all suddenly made sense. Robyn wasn't just his emotional anchor. She was his legal filter. The family's public voice, every interview, every PR statement, every emotional confession, was quietly run through Robyn's approval. She didn't just influence him, she authored him. Fans began rewatching episodes, listening to Kody's words with new ears. Moments where he parroted Robyn's phrasing. Times he defended her when it defied all logic. Now it wasn't confusion, it was compliance. But the rabbit hole went even deeper. At the bottom of page 6, under a section labeled Clause 4D, Protective Confidentiality, was a single, chilling sentence. The second party shall be exempted from any retroactive responsibility in connection with statements made under emotional distress, if such statements are made for the purpose of maintaining family harmony or reputation. In plain English, Robyn Brown was legally protected to lie, as long as it was for the good of the family. She could distort, deceive, or manipulate, and no one could call it fraud or dishonesty. Because the contract itself said it was allowed. It was immunity disguised as loyalty, a built-in defense system against accountability. Online investigators dubbed it the ultimate gaslight clause. And suddenly, all those tearful confessionals, the trembling lip, the glistening eyes, the rehearsed sadness, took on a sinister new meaning. They weren't just emotional moments. They were performances, scripted protection. Each tear wasn't for guilt or heartbreak. It was for control. And then came something that shook even seasoned analysts. At the very end of the file, attached loosely to the contract, was a handwritten addendum. No signature, no official stamp. Just a date, written 2 days after the main document. It read, "Upon satisfactory mutual fulfillment of conduct expectations, the second party shall be entitled to co-ownership rights of any subsequent intellectual property generated under family brand titles." That single paragraph changed everything. Because intellectual property didn't mean just the show, it meant the SisterWives brand. The books, the spin-offs, the licensing deals, the social media rights. In short, Robyn wouldn't just star in the story. She could own it. That's why her silence had power. Her composure wasn't just self-control, it was strategy. Every calm interview, every "I just want peace" statement wasn't just for optics. It was for equity. Ownership meant leverage. Leverage meant silence. Silence meant control. And as the puzzle pieces fell into place, everything about Kody's transformation around 2014 made sense. The sudden coldness toward Christine, the growing distance from Janelle, the quiet hostility toward Mary. It wasn't random. It was scripted. Because by that year, the contract had already rewritten the rules of their family. Each on-screen confrontation wasn't spontaneous heartbreak. It was a business exchange, a performance engineered to protect the empire Robyn now helped manage. Kody's loyalty wasn't emotional anymore. It was transactional. He needed Robyn's cooperation to keep the show alive, to keep the income flowing, to keep the image of the faithful patriarch intact while the rest of the house burned around him. Without her, his empire risked collapse. With her, under the binding terms of that agreement, he had stability, protection, and control over the narrative. But the most damning part wasn't typed. It was scribbled. At the very bottom of page 7, in faint pencil, were the words, "All others to remain uninformed until review." That one line made it official. Mary, Janelle, and Christine were never meant to know this contract even existed. They weren't partners. They weren't equals. They were subjects in a structure that had already excluded them before they even had a chance to speak. This wasn't just favoritism, it was erasure by design. And suddenly, Christine's emotional breakdowns, the pain of feeling invisible, weren't overreactions. They were the cries of a woman being written out of her own life story. Janelle's frustration, Mary's quiet endurance, all symptoms of a system that had legally bound Kody to one woman, while pretending to belong to four. Fans once thought Christine was dramatic. Now they see it for what it was, the sound of someone realizing she'd been replaced, not in spirit but in ink. Until today, the discovery of the Robyn clause has completely turned the story of SisterWives upside down. What the world once believed to be a spiritual journey, a family's divine test of unity and love, now stands exposed as something far more calculated. A contract-based machine of silence, image control, and manipulation. For years, viewers saw Robyn Brown as the teary-eyed peacemaker, the soft voice of reason, the woman who tried to hold the family together. But now, that fragile image has shattered. What fans once thought was emotional vulnerability was actually a performance, the most beautifully written acting job in the history of reality television. Because it wasn't improvised, it was scripted before the cameras ever started rolling. When love becomes a legal weapon, when devotion is defined by clauses and signatures, the question becomes chillingly simple. Who really rules, the heart or the contract? The aftermath wasn't immediate. It was slow, deliberate, and devastating, disguised as emotional drift, but in truth, a fallout designed years in advance. The moment Kody and Robyn secretly sealed their marital contract, the family's foundation began to shift. Not with a bang, but like a silent earthquake rumbling beneath the surface. The changes came subtly at first. More screen time for Robyn, more solo interviews drenched in emotional gravity. Her tears became sacred, her words final. Meanwhile, Mary's pain was framed as bitterness, Christine's exhaustion as dramatics, and Janelle's independence as rebellion. Every emotion that wasn't Robyn's was rewritten as a flaw. And yet, looking back, the clues were there all along. Christine's heartbreaking confession still echoes. I feel like a basement wife. Viewers sympathized, but no one understood that what she felt wasn't just neglect. It was the direct result of a legal document, the Robyn clause, already in full effect. The emotional hierarchy had become contractual. Kody wasn't just changing, he was bound. Legally, financially, spiritually. The language of the contract guaranteed Robyn both public and private primacy. Kody's loyalty was now written in ink, not felt in love. In a 2015 episode, when Janelle was struggling to understand her place in the Coyote Pass vision, asking simple questions like, "Where do I fit?" she never knew the answer had already been written for her. Robyn's clause had given her preferential property rights to new assets, silencing Janelle's claim before she even spoke. Kody's silence wasn't emotional avoidance. It was negotiated silence. Even his hesitation, even his refusal to respond, all of it was part of the deal. By 2017, Mary had been reduced to a ghost in her own story. She launched business ventures, sought emotional refuge outside the family, and desperately tried to reignite what was long gone. But how could she? The contract had already rendered her obsolete, stripped of financial stake, creative control, and even voice. Production sources later confirmed. By 2018, Robyn was making editing demands, invoking her co-management clause. She wasn't just the emotional center, she was now the producer's gatekeeper. Christine's final years tell the most haunting part of the tale. Her growing sadness wasn't weakness. It was defiance. She was swimming against a tide she couldn't see, a legal tide that had already erased her from relevance. When she pleaded to leave Flagstaff for Utah, Kody's refusal wasn't about family unity. The contract had already locked him geographically, tied to Robyn's Arizona stability clause, bound by language about domestic consistency. Christine's dreams of freedom were never going to fit that contract. She wasn't being ignored. She was being bypassed by consent. When she finally walked away in 2021, the world saw courage. What they didn't see was inevitability. It wasn't a breakup. It was a pre-written ending conceived 7 years earlier. Meanwhile, Janelle, ever strategic, began her quiet exit. She started separating finances, living part-time in her RV, reclaiming her autonomy piece by piece. Viewers saw it as independence. In truth, it was survival. She had learned that the Coyote Pass deeds had been reassigned without her consent, her presence erased not emotionally, but legally. By 2022, she was done pretending. Her words grew sharp, her patience faded. The battle for emotional respect had turned into a war over land. And then there was Mary, the loyalist, the first wife who stayed even when there was nothing left to stay for. For years, she clung to spiritual vows, hoping for love's resurrection. But behind the scenes, the ink of that contract had already sealed her fate. When Kody publicly declared their relationship over in 2023, it wasn't an ending. It was an echo. The real separation had been written long ago, in secret, beneath the quiet signatures of a man and a woman who turned faith into paperwork. Now, as we lay the pages of the contract beside the timeline of the family's downfall, a haunting symmetry emerges. Every emotional breakdown, every confession, every walkout, all align perfectly with each clause. This wasn't chaos, it was choreography. And the Robyn clause wasn't just a deal. It was the invisible hand that rewrote the destiny of every wife in the Brown family, and the script of SisterWives itself. SisterWives itself. What you're about to hear is not just another family dispute. It's the revelation of a system, a web of signatures, secrets, and silence that rewrote the history of the SisterWives family from the inside out. The contract didn't just divide hearts. It rewired the entire emotional landscape of the Browns into a hierarchy of loyalty, where affection was no longer love. It was legal obligation. Robyn Brown wasn't simply earning Kody's favor. She had contracted it. Kody's coldness wasn't distance, it was duty. And the wives? They weren't just ignored, they were collateral in a corporate reconstruction of family itself. When this document came to light, even TLC's polished silence began to look suspicious. Because if Robyn truly had co-control over licensing and media, and if Kody was legally bound to consult her before saying a single word publicly, then what we've been watching for years wasn't reality television at all. It was an orchestrated performance, filtered, edited, approved, and monetized. Every argument, every confession, every tear suddenly became part of a controlled narrative. The story of wives leaving wasn't just about heartbreak anymore, it was a cover story. Behind it lay betrayal, exclusion, and the invisible hand of a corporate mechanism designed to protect two people, Kody and Robyn. By 2023, the Brown family wasn't destroyed by the failure of polygamy. It was dismantled by paperwork. A legal document quietly rewrote the laws of loyalty without ever telling everyone who was bound by it. But buried deep in the pile was one page, folded twice, sealed with a separate paperclip, marked Appendix C. That's the one that changed everything. Unlike the rest of the contract, this page wasn't typed cleanly. It was a mixture of legal jargon and scribbles, a Frankenstein clause, as if rewritten in panic or secrecy at the very last moment. And right at the top, under the title, Mutual Protective Agreement and Non-Disclosure Conditions, lay the weapon that kept three women silent for nearly a decade. Any party to this contract or associated family member, including spiritual spouses or dependents, who reveals the contents, terms, or implications of this document shall be held in breach of family trust and liable to reputational litigation. This wasn't a warning. It was a gag order, a sword disguised as a sentence. Then came the next line, colder than the first. Breach of confidence may result in loss of access to family assets, property, business income, inheritance, and media participation. In one paragraph, Kody and Robyn created a kingdom of silence. The wives weren't just emotionally trapped. They were financially imprisoned. Speak up and you lose it all. Your home, your stability, your children's future, your voice. The Robyn clause didn't just favor her, it punished dissent. Even the vague phrasing, reputational litigation, was deliberate. It could mean lawsuits, or just public humiliation. Either way, it made sure no one dared challenge her. And then came the handwritten note at the bottom of the page, dated one day after the main contract. Agreement shall remain undisclosed indefinitely unless jointly declassified. Even hinting at its existence counted as betrayal. That's why Mary's cryptic Instagram posts were so carefully worded. Why Janelle's interviews always stop short. Why Christine's early confessions seemed incomplete, as if she were walking a verbal minefield. They weren't just being careful. They were protecting themselves. Even the children knew. You could see it in their hesitations, their pauses, the way they avoided naming certain things. The contract didn't just bind the parents, it cast a shadow over an entire generation. And then came the final line, underlined in red, titled, Final Security Provision. In case of willful or accidental disclosure, parties agree to deny, discredit, and neutralize all allegations until evidence becomes incontrovertible. It was a protocol for lying, a pre-approved script for denial. So when Robyn called the leaked papers hurtful lies and Kody mocked them as internet trash, they weren't reacting. They were executing the plan, They were following a rehearsed damage control playbook, one that had been written long before the public ever knew there was something to hide. And yet, even with all that control, the document escaped. Someone inside that circle valued truth more than safety. Someone decided the world deserved to see what really held this family together, and tore it apart. And now it's too late to contain it. The wives can finally breathe. The fans can finally see, and Kody and Robyn can no longer deny. Because that final page, Appendix C, doesn't just explain the past. It redefines the entire future of SisterWives. Were Kody's breakdowns real or rehearsed? Were Robyn's tears sincere or protected by immunity? Was Christine's departure emotional and/or contractual? The contract answers not with feelings, but with clauses. Cold, deliberate, unfeeling clauses designed to transform love into leverage and silence into survival. And as the screen fades to black, one final line remains in blood-red letters across the frame. Tomorrow, document number 02, Mary's secret financial files. Secret financial files.